Hey, my name is Marcus Webb. I'm 29 years old, and I work as an audio technician for a regional theater company in Millhaven, Ohio, a small city with a big performing arts center that was built with grant money in the 90s and has been operating on optimism and deferred maintenance ever since. I run the soundboard for productions, hang and cable microphones, manage the signal chain from stage to speaker, and fix whatever breaks in the system, which is a weekly occurrence and sometimes a nightly one. If the audience hears the show clearly, they forget I exist. That is the job done correctly. I came into this work sideways. My father ran a repair shop for electronics, televisions, stereos, anything with a circuit board, in the back of a strip mall in Dayton. And I grew up learning how every component in a system was connected to every other component. He had a saying he repeated so many times, it stopped sounding like a saying and started sounding like a law. A system is only as strong as its quietest part. He meant it about circuits. I've applied it to most things since. My days have a rhythm I've learned to value. Up at 7, coffee, check the production schedule and the maintenance log for whichever show we're running. Into the theater by 9 on prep days, by noon on show days. There's always something to repatch, re-terminate, or reroute. After a show, I'm the last one out. I do a full signal check after the house empties, run a diagnostic on any channels that flagged during the performance, and lock up. Home by midnight on performance nights, sometimes later. Eat whatever I can make in under 15 minutes. Sleep. I don't go out much. This isn't a complaint, it's more a statement of logistics. My schedule runs perpendicular to the social world. When most people are going to dinner, I'm setting levels. When most people are at a bar on Saturday night, I'm watching a musical from behind a glass window with headphones around my neck. My two closest friends in Millhaven are a lighting designer named Dex, who works the same schedule I do, and a stage manager named Portia, who has been trying to set me up with someone for the better part of 2 years. I keep telling her the schedule makes it hard. She keeps telling me the schedule is an excuse. Neither of us is entirely wrong. I'm not someone people notice when I walk into a room. This doesn't bother me the way it once did. I'm average height, average build, the kind of face that reads as calm in a way that people sometimes mistake for boring. I've made my peace with being the person who keeps the system running quietly. The work is what's visible. I don't need to be. What I didn't know, on the first Monday in February 2 years ago, was that I was about to walk into a room where I would have to decide what kind of person to be in front of 40 witnesses. The theater company sends its technical staff to a professional development week every other year, a workshop program at a regional arts center in Columbus that covers new equipment, updated production software, and whatever the prevailing trends in live sound are doing that season. I'd been once before, 4 years ago, when I'd just started. That time I'd kept to myself, learned what I needed, and gone home. This time the program coordinator had paired everyone up for the week's main project, a full system design and implementation exercise that counted toward the continuing education certification we all needed. You worked with your partner on every stage of it. Design, installation, troubleshooting, final presentation. Your grade was shared. The pairings went up on a board in the main workshop room the first morning. 40 people stood in a cluster reading names. I found mine, Webb, M, and followed the line across. Then I heard the noise. Not one person, several, at roughly the same moment. A ripple of something that was not quite laughter, but was adjacent to it. A few exhales. Someone behind me said, under their breath, something that I caught the shape of without catching the words. And the person next to him said, "Oh man," and shook his head. I found the name on the other side of the pairing. Nadia Osi. I didn't know who that was. I was looking for her name on the board when I heard someone near me. A man from a theater company in Akron, name of Brett, who had the particular confidence of a person who has always been in the majority of whatever room he's in, say quietly and deliberately, so it would carry to the right ears. There go Webb's chances. I turned to look at him. He was talking to the person next to him. He didn't look at me. I found a seat at one of the paired work tables and waited. She came in late. Not dramatically late, 5 minutes. The kind of late that happens when someone has made a careful decision about when to enter a room. She was 26 or 27. Slight, with natural hair pulled up and secured with something that had started the morning neat and was already softening. She was wearing a plaid flannel shirt that was too big for her, pushed to the elbows, over dark work pants, and she was carrying a binder that was thick with tabbed inserts. The kind of binder that means someone has done more preparation than anyone expected them to. She scanned the room, found the table number, found me at it. There was a moment where she stood in the doorway and the room, in aggregate, did what rooms do when they have already formed an opinion about someone. It went very slightly, very collectively, still. Not a dramatic silence, a social one, the kind where everyone stops performing and just watches. She crossed the room and sat down across from me. I looked at her. "Marcus Webb," I said. "Nadia Osei." She set the binder on the table and opened it to the first tabbed section without looking at the room. "I've read the project brief, have you?" "On the train," I said. "The brief says we're designing a 200-seat multi-purpose room, mid-scale mixing console, full distributed speaker system, broadcast quality recording capability." She turned the binder so I could see her notes. She had already mapped a rough signal chain, in pencil, in a neat hand, with annotations. "I have some thoughts about the speaker placement if you want to start there." I looked at the signal chain, then at her. "Yes," I said. We were working within 4 minutes of her sitting down. I found out what had happened, the way you find things out in professional settings, in pieces, across the first 2 days. Nadia was a sound designer, not a technician, a designer. There was a distinction that mattered in this room, where most of the attendees were operators and technicians, and the handful of designers present occupied a slightly different professional tier. She had started in technical work, the way most people did, and had moved into design over the last 3 years. Her work was primarily in immersive theater and site-specific productions, not the kind of shows that Millhaven ran, but the kind that happened in warehouses and empty buildings and outdoor spaces where the environment itself was part of the sound. The mockery, and I want to be precise about this because it matters, was not about her work. Her work was, by any objective measure, more sophisticated than most of what was in the room. The mockery was about a presentation she had given at this same workshop 2 years prior, the last time this cohort had convened, when she had proposed a speaker design concept for a high-ceiling industrial space that the room had decided was too unconventional to take seriously. She had used research from acoustic physics that most of the attendees weren't current on. The session moderator had cut her off early. Someone had described her approach in the post-session survey as overreaching for a technician of her experience level. She was 24 at the time. It was her first professional workshop appearance. She had spent 4 months preparing the presentation. I did not know any of this when she sat down across from me with her binder and her pencil annotations and her signal chain already half drawn. I knew it by Wednesday, and I understood by Wednesday why she had been 5 minutes late on Monday. She had been standing outside the door, making herself ready for this room. What I knew from the moment she opened the binder was that she was exact, fast, and didn't waste time. She thought in systems, not in individual components, but in how everything moved together, end to end. When she identified a problem in our design, she didn't just name it. She named it and the two downstream consequences and the fix. I had worked with maybe 60 sound technicians and designers in 9 years, and I had never worked alongside someone who thought the way my father had described a well-built circuit. Every component aware of every other component. On Tuesday afternoon, we had a disagreement about the subwoofer placement. I wanted a traditional understage configuration. She wanted a distributed floor array that I thought was going to cause phase problems at the front row. We argued about it for 20 minutes. She was right. I checked her math twice before I admitted it, which she pretended not to notice. "Your check was faster the second time," she said, without looking up from the draft. "I was looking for a different error," I said. "Were you?" "No," I said. The corner of her mouth moved. Brett, from Akron, had a way of orbiting our table at breaks. Not confrontationally, with the specific casual quality of someone who wants to observe something he predicted would fail, and is still waiting for it to fail. He made 2 comments over the first 3 days that were directed, technically, at the room, but angled toward our table. One was about overcomplicating a straightforward design. The other was about the difference between academic theory and floor-level experience. Neither of us responded. On Thursday morning, the moderator asked each pair to present their design in progress to the room for a 10-minute check-in. It was informal, no grades, just a temperature read on how each pair was doing. We were the 4th pair up. Nadia presented the overall system architecture. I covered the technical implementation. She had built a small physical model of the speaker array using materials from the supply room, foam board, scaled-down speaker mock-ups, printed acoustical coverage maps. She had done this the previous evening while I was re-terminating a cable run we'd decided to redo. When she put the model on the table and walked through the coverage maps, the room was quiet in a different way than it had been when she walked in on Monday. Monday's silence had been social. This one was the silence of people looking at something they hadn't expected and not knowing immediately how to place it. Brett said from the 3rd row, "The distributed floor array is going to cause phase issues at the front." Nadia looked at him, calm. "We tested that," she said. "The phase offset at the front row is 3 milliseconds, within acceptable threshold for the room size and the program material we're designing for." She turned to the coverage map. "We've accounted for it here." He looked at the map. He didn't say anything else. The moderator said, "This is ahead of most pairs at the midpoint. Good work." After the session, during the break, I watched the room reorbit slightly. Not dramatically. People don't announce when they're revising an opinion. But 3 people who had not spoken to her all week came to look at the model. She answered their questions with the same economy she brought to everything. No performance, no residual bitterness, just the work. I refilled my coffee and stood next to her at the table when the questions slowed. "You built that last night," I said. "I had the materials." "It took hours." She was quiet for a moment. I needed the room to see it, not just hear it. She straightened one of the coverage maps. People who dismiss something once need to see it differently to change their mind, not just hear the same argument again. I thought about that. "Is that what happened last time?" I said. "They just heard it." She looked at the model. I gave them a presentation, slides, data. A pause. I didn't give them something to look at and touch. She was quiet. I was 24 and I thought being right was enough. "It should be," I said. "It should be," she agreed. It isn't always. We ate lunch together every day that week, by default at first, and then by something else that neither of us named. The building had a cafeteria that emptied out fast at noon because most of the workshop attendees went to a bar 2 blocks away that served lunch. We stayed in the cafeteria. The first day because we were working. The second because she had brought food from somewhere and offered me half. The third because Dex would have said I was making an excuse, and he would have been right. On Wednesday, she told me about the speaker design presentation. Not dramatically. The way you describe something that cost you and that you've since carried far enough that the weight is familiar. She had been excited about the research. She had thought the room would want to hear something new. She hadn't understood yet that professional rooms have a social hierarchy that operates independently of the quality of the work, and that a 24-year-old woman presenting research that made senior technicians feel behind was not going to be received as the gift she thought it was. I cried in my car afterward, she said. She said it plainly, the way she said everything. For about an hour, then I drove home and I didn't do another public presentation for 18 months. And now, I said, and now I'm here. She opened her water bottle. I'm not over it exactly. I just decided it was worse to stay home. I looked at the table for a moment. My father used to say that a signal doesn't stop being a signal because someone fails to receive it, I said. The problem is on the receiving end, not in what was sent. She looked at me. That's what happened to your presentation, I said. The problem was on the receiving end. She was quiet for a long time. Thank you for sitting down on Monday, she said. I looked at her. I sat down because you were my partner. I know, she said. But you sat down like it was nothing. Like the room wasn't doing what it was doing. I've been in a lot of rooms in the last 2 years, and I know what it costs someone to not perform what the room wants them to perform. She looked at me directly. It wasn't nothing for you? Even if you made it look like nothing. My throat was doing something. No, I said. It wasn't nothing. She nodded once. We ate the rest of lunch, mostly in quiet. And it was the kind of quiet I've spent most of my adult life working in. The kind that happens when a system is running right and nothing needs adjusting. The final presentations were Friday afternoon. Each pair had 20 minutes to present their complete system design to the full group and the 2 guest assessors who had come in from a production company in Cincinnati. The presentations were graded. The grades went into the continuing education files. People cared. We were the 6th pair. Nadia had reorganized the full presentation the night before, restructuring the sequence so the most counterintuitive decision, the distributed floor array, came after we had established the governing logic of the whole design, not led with it. Earned the room's willingness to hear it first. I had watched her do this at the table in the workshop room at 9 o'clock the night before, alone except for me on the other side of the table running cable diagnostics. She was moving through a slide sequence on her laptop, stopping, rearranging, stopping again. She did it 4 times before she got to a sequence she set down and didn't touch. How do you know when it's right? I asked. She looked up. The sequence, I said. How do you know when it's right? She thought about it. When I can't find a better order, she said. Not when I love it. When I've checked everything else and it's the only thing left. I nodded. How do you know when a mix is right? She said. Same thing, I said. When everything that was wrong is gone, what's left is right. You don't always hear the rightness. You hear the end of the wrongness. She looked at me for a long moment. Yeah, she said quietly. That's exactly it. The presentation on Friday went like a well-designed system running at full capacity. Nadia walked the room through the logic. I handled the technical specifications. The distributed array was the pivot point of the design. And when we got to it, she had the room ready. She had built the architecture that made it receivable. The room that had been silent and slightly dismissive on Monday was, by Friday, leaning forward. One of the guest assessors, a woman from the Cincinnati company named Dr. Angela Park, who had clearly seen a few hundred of these presentations, asked a question after we finished that she hadn't asked any other pair. She wanted to know how we had resolved the phase offset decision. Nadia walked her through it. Dr. Park said, "This is the most rigorous acoustic design I've seen at this workshop in 3 years." The room was quiet again. Different this time. Brett did not say anything. We drove out of Columbus in separate cars, but we stopped at the same rest area on 71N, which neither of us had planned. She was leaning against her car with a coffee when I pulled in. She looked at me when I got out, with the particular expression of someone who has just finished something large and is still calibrating what's on the other side of it. "Good week," she said. "Good week," I said. "Your father's saying," she said, "about systems. A system is only as strong as its quietest part." She turned the coffee cup in her hands. "I've been the quietest part in every room I've been in for 2 years," she said. "Quietest in the sense of ignored, compensating, carrying more than the share I was assigned." She looked at the highway. "This week I was the quietest part in the right way, the way where it holds." I didn't say anything for a moment. "You were always that," I said. "The rooms were just badly designed." She looked at me. The afternoon light was doing what it does in February in Ohio, which is arrive sideways and low and make everything look like it has more weight than usual. She looked at me, and I looked at her, and I thought about the thing I had understood at the kitchen table on Wednesday, when she said it wasn't nothing, the thing I had been carrying since then, without yet deciding what to do with it. "I'd like to keep working with you," I said. "Not just this week." She was quiet. "I mean, professionally," I said. "But I also mean not just professionally." She looked at the coffee cup for a moment. Then at me. The same look she'd had when she verified the phase offset, checking the math, not because she doubted the equation, but because she needed to be certain before she committed. "I've been careful for 2 years," she said. "I know. Not about work, about letting people—" She stopped. "Found it. About letting people be close to the work and what it costs." She looked at me. "Because the work is what I have. And when someone is close to it and then uses the closeness to diminish it—" She stopped. "I won't do that," I said. "I'm not built for it." She looked at me for a long time. "No," she said slowly. "I don't think you are." A pause. I checked. I laughed. Suddenly, fully, with the particular surprise of laughter that comes when something you've been holding tightly is allowed to be lighter. "You checked. You're not on social media. You have a LinkedIn with 3 connections. I looked up your theater company's production archive. You've been there 6 years. The reviews mention the sound design every time and never mention your name." She looked at me with something that was close to warm. "You're not someone who makes noise about himself." "No. I need that," she said. "I need someone who understands what it means to do good work quietly." "I know what it means," I said. She held the coffee cup for one more moment. Then she said, "Okay, just that." But the way she said it, not as a concession, not as a test, but as a decision she had made completely, it landed like the end of wrongness. That was 2 years ago. She is designing the sound for the new season at Millhaven now, Our company commissioned her for 2 productions after I gave her name to our artistic director, who had been looking for exactly the kind of work she does. The first production opened in October, and the review in the Columbus Arts Journal called the sound design startling and immersive, which was accurate and which she read at the kitchen table of my apartment with the same calm face she brings to everything. And then quietly went to the back porch, and I found her there 10 minutes later, just standing in the cold air. I stood next to her. "Good review," I said. "Yes," she said. "You don't have to be okay about it," I said. "You can just feel it." She was quiet for a moment. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder. That was all. We stood on the porch in the February cold while the sounds of the neighborhood came and went around us. And I didn't say anything, because there was nothing a system needed that it didn't already have. Portia, the stage manager, called it 2 months before it happened. She told me in October that I had been visibly different since Columbus, and that she was glad, and that she reserved the right to say she'd told me so. I told her the schedule had made it easier. She told me she was going to get that engraved on something. Dex just asked if Nadia was coming to the cast party, and when I said yes, he said good, and went back to adjusting his gel frames. Which is the most Dex has ever said about anything personal, and which I received as the compliment it was. Dr. Angela Park from the Cincinnati company hired Nadia for a consulting project in the spring, citing specifically the distributed array design from the workshop. Brett from Akron was not present at the follow-up workshop in the fall for reasons no one discussed, which is how professional communities handle these things when the truth is visible enough. Nadia keeps the physical model, the foam board one, the one she built the night before the Thursday check-in, with the scaled speaker mock-ups and the printed coverage maps on the shelf in her studio. It's not pristine anymore. Some of the pieces have been re-glued where they came apart in transit. One of the coverage maps has a coffee ring on it. It looks like something that has been used and kept, which is what it is. I asked her once why she kept it. She said, "Because it was the first time I trusted the work enough to let someone see it." I said, "You trusted it before that. You brought the binder." She thought about this. "I trusted the work before that," she said. "This was the first time I trusted the room." She looked at me when she said it. She meant a specific room, and she meant a specific part of it, and we both knew which part. My father was right about systems. A system is only as strong as its quietest part. The quietest part of a signal chain is the one that receives, the component that takes what's been transmitted, processes it cleanly, and passes it on without adding noise. You can build a perfect source. You can run perfect cable. But if the receiver is wrong, none of it arrives. She had been transmitting clearly for years into rooms that were built to distort. I don't know if I changed anything about those rooms. I know I was built to receive what she was sending, and I know that on the first Monday in February, I sat down across from her at a table while 40 people waited to see if I would understand what I was sitting next to. I understood.